Hi there, I'm Jen Tardy. I'm your diversity recruiting thought leader, and we are back with a whole nother video. And in this video, we're talking about effective language to use in diversity recruiting. And I teach this actual segment in our training programs, but I want to give you a high level because I know that if you feel that you have effective language to use, it will greatly help you to lean more into doing this work as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, or anyone connected on the front lines to helping the organization to increase diversity. So if you're ready, let's get started. Before we can begin talking about effective language to use, and I'm only going to give you a few examples, I want to first begin talking about ineffective language. So notice that I'm not saying right language or wrong language to use. I'm talking about ineffective language. And when I mention ineffective language, I mean that I call it ineffective because it leaves room open for assumptions. It may create confusion because you're not specific enough, or it leaves people out of the conversation. So an example of ineffective language to use is how we've been using the term diverse. And I have even been that person as well too. When I first started this journey, saying diverse people or diverse populations as a euphemism, instead of saying that we're trying to increase representation among Black or Latinx employees or people with disabilities, I would use the term diverse, which is not effective language because it leaves people out of the conversation and it can be confusing. So when we say diverse populations, diversity is not because of me, it's not within me. Diversity is because of us, okay? There can be no diversity with just me as an individual, so I cannot be diverse. Diversity is in context to a group, not a person. Diversity means variety. Diversity means different. So if you just call me diverse, you're calling me different. Different to whom, right? Different to, and this is where we start talking about norms or status quos, and that is not the case. I'm not different to the status quo. I may be underrepresented within the organization. As we begin thinking about more effective language to use, rather than saying, I'm looking to hire more diverse people, we're able to say, we're trying to increase diversity in our candidate pool. We're working to increase diversity within our organization, okay? But if we want to go a level deeper and be more specific, it's our way of being able to say, we want to increase representation among X population. And it's saying the population where you want to increase representation. Because right now, the reason why we in organizations want to increase diversity is because there are several populations that are left out of the conversation, okay? And it's your organization's responsibility of being clear to all employees on where you're highly underrepresented and where you're highly overrepresented. And so now that the organization knows where you're overly represented and where you're underrepresented, now they get it, where you're able to say, oh, we want to increase representation among Black women in executive leadership positions. Oh, I get it now, because we're underrepresented and now we want to increase representation among them. Okay. Another way of being able to have this conversation is talking about historically underrepresented populations or groups. And as I talk about them, I talk about groups that have been historically underrepresented in corporate America. And then you have data to show that the underrepresentation means that there are more people available to do this work than there are represented within your organization. And the reason why that is not because they're not qualified to do the work, but because historically there's been disenfranchisement, there have been hurdles, there have been barriers preventing equal and equitable access to opportunities. And so as we begin talking about groups or populations that have been historically underrepresented in the workplace, that's what we're talking about here. The language that we use, this effective language that we use, helps people to move along the journey with us as we're working to increase diversity within the overall organization. Another area of effective language that can be used is when we start talking about minoritized or marginalized groups, because we're talking about the same populations, but then we're saying, pay attention to the reason why they're underrepresented. It's because of those barriers or perceptions that have been put upon them that have caused the inequities. And so it's one thing to say we're trying to increase diversity among minorities. I'm not a big fan of the term minority, because minority means less in population, and it may not always be the most effective term to use, but the way in which we've been using it is, again, another way of saying historically underrepresented populations, or a nice way of saying I'm talking about Black and Latinx employees, for example. Now, instead of using the term minority, we're able to talk about minoritized. The things that have been put upon them, the perceptions that have been put upon these populations that have given the incorrect perception that they are lesser than. All right, you following me so far? We go deep here. And even marginalized populations, which then goes back to that disenfranchisement. And so things put upon you and push into being perceived, which is an incorrect perception, as inferior. So creating a baseline of common language starts here. It's being able to use effective language that we all agree doesn't leave people out of the conversation, allows us to be more specific in who we're talking to, and it's language that everyone has access to be able to use without fear of saying the wrong thing, of being reprimanded, of things of that nature, because all of that causes more people to want to lean into the conversation. And with more people leaning into the conversation around increasing diversity, you see more positive outcomes in increasing diversity and inclusion within the organization. 3 things that I want to share with you. One is that if you like this video, be sure to click the like button, give us a thumbs up. So that's the way that we know that we need to keep producing more of these videos. The second thing that I want to share with you is that if you like this video, you're also going to like another video that we did recently, which is called Going Beyond the Surface to Increase Diversity. This video goes a little bit below the surface, but in that video, it shows you other tactics to go below the surface as opposed to superficial tactics like doing Boolean string searches. I also want to remind you, if you are new to this community, that we have a free guide, a free downloadable guide called the Platinum Checklist, which is 10 things that hiring managers or hiring leaders can stop doing in order to increase representation within your organization. So if you haven't gotten it, go to the description section and you'll see the link there, and go ahead and download that guide and use it immediately. Until then, I am Jen Tardy. I am your diversity recruiting thought leader. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.